I'm back with Amour. Amour was sharing about her growing up and how the Lord did different things in her life at different points. As she came to this point, she was beginning to have her children, so Amour, take it from where you left off. You're in Belgium, moved to Belgium, and you're having your children, and you're having difficulties, especially with your second child in the birth. Go on from there.
Right. Yeah. So then, prior to me moving to Belgium, and even being pregnant, actually, the Lord spoke to us, and He spoke to me through my husband, and He said, "You would have a second child, and with that, you will know that I am God with you." So then, for me, it was Emmanuel, God with us, and I even said to myself, I think it's going to be a girl, and I'm going to call her Emmanuel. So I was literally, um, just thinking that. And I don't know what point that was, but then during that same year, I was then pregnant. And October, I was in Belgium visiting. My husband already moved to Belgium. I was still in London. So I was in Belgium visiting, and I had that dream where the child was coming out, detached, the fetus was detached from the placenta and was coming up my throat, and I had to swallow it. And what happened as well was that was October. So then December, I'm in Belgium on holiday visiting my husband. So we go to hospital for a checkup. And that's not December. I'm in Belgium. My pastor sent us a message and said that he had a dream. And in that dream, the Lord was telling him that we were going to go through something. It was going to be very difficult, but we will know that God will be with us, and also to remember the day of the baby's dedication. So that was December. So
Right.
January, before I left Belgium, because my son was returning to school in England, we went for a consultation. At that consultation, the doctor says, "Madam, I can't let you go home because your cervix is opened, is dilated 3 centimeters at 26 weeks." So I
Wow.
was literally like going into labor. And so we stayed there the entire day, and I began to ask the Lord, "What am I doing here? What is happening? This is not my country. I don't even have health insurance here as yet." And then I just heard the Lord say, "Get out of this hospital." I literally pulled the catheter like that and said and told the doctor, "I'm out." And she said, "No, madam, you're gonna give birth on the road or in the toilet at home, and this baby will die, and it'll be your fault. You have to stay here." But I knew that I wasn't supposed to stay at that
Wow.
particular hospital. So I left, and then I stayed home. I was bedbound for 1 week. I didn't move. I was just literally sitting, laying down on my bed like that for a week. And then towards the end of that week, I just began to feel this back pain, and it was contractions. And I just knew that this is it. Time's up. I have to go to the hospital. So I changed hospitals, and I went to another one where people were so welcoming. I just felt the presence of the Lord there. And as I arrived there, they say, the baby's already crowning, the baby's there. And even the contraction ended. They really had to force the contractions. And the baby came out, it was tiny, at 27 weeks, 1 kilo, 0.1. And they took him straight up to the neonatal unit. And they were looking for, they had to put the catheters and whatever they do there, and his veins were so weak that it would just burst, boom, burst, here, burst, there, burst, there, burst, there, burst. And they told my husband, "You have to leave the room." So then they found one on his foot, and they put it in there, and that's how they were able to stabilize him. And we stayed there for 2 months and 10 days. And that's when this journey with this calling, if I can call it that, started.
What as you're going through that time, okay? What is it? What are the things? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's it? What's it? What are you saying to God? What is God saying to you, or what's going on with you?
Just give me 1 second, Alan. I'm just not going to close the door.
Sure.
Can you close the door? Because I've got my workers out there working in the garden. This door, please. So what is going in? Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the first time in my life where I was holding on to something, and I'm holding on to the day of the dedication. That's all I need to do. and I'm holding onto it like this strong rope, and I didn't want to let it go. And I was like, God said, because God said it's going to be so. And I completely forgot that I was actually in this bubble, in this neonatal unit world. And I used to take the train in the morning because the hospital was, I'll say probably 40 minutes from the house if I took public transport. So every morning I would get up and I would get ready as if I was going to work, and I'll take the you call it the subway, the underground, and I'll go to the hospital. So I'll get off at this train station, underground station, with the people that were going to work. People thought maybe I worked there, but I was actually going to the hospital to look after my child. And I did that for 2 months and 10 days.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this. Before this episode, you would have another episode with your last child. Before this time, did you have any kind of personal awareness to women having birth problems, birth issues? Was there any consciousness of that, and the possibility of infant mortality and all of those terms that were talked about in more professional terms? Did you have any consciousness of those kinds of things?
No, not even with my first child, not even with my second child, with my first premature baby, not even with the third one. And it just hit me after, when I literally tasted death. That's when everything came alive. Even with the first premature baby, which is my second child, I didn't think of that.
Right. Okay.
At all. It didn't even cross my mind. I just didn't.
Right. Right. It was just your personal experience.
Yes. And I think it's with the third pregnancy when I literally, tested death, and I was like, something. And then I asked the Lord. I remember asking the Lord, and I was angry, actually. I was telling the Lord, why can't I just have the joy of having family visit me in the hospital? And I remember this is like was that my second? Yeah, my third, no. At the hospital, with my first premature baby, the family came and they said, "Where's the baby?" And there wasn't no baby in the room. And I told them he's upstairs in the neonatal unit. And then I just felt like sadness overwhelm me. That was with my first premature baby. Then with my second, I was like, oh my God, this is not normal. This is another pregnancy where there's no baby in the room. And then I remember the pediatrician coming in and saying, oh, madam, they do their rounds checking the babies. And they came to mine, and my baby wasn't there. And I told the Lord, I said, okay, wait here, Lord, something is not right. This is just unfair. Why? And I even remember telling them, I'm never ever going to have any more children. You may as well just take everything out. And they said, no, madam, you're 30 years old. We won't do that. I'm like, no, I would not, never, ever, ever. Because I don't want to go through this. Maybe my body is not made for carrying babies, No.
Very interesting. Well, finish what you were saying about your third child, your second premature birth. That was almost fatal for you. You almost died from that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the first premature birth was difficult, yes, but it was just like a starter. The main course was the last one. That was a terrible one, because there wasn't anything as fatal with the first premature birth, because it was just them discovering that the cervix was open. I was dilated early, and but I already had that attack, just with words of that lady telling me, no, if you don't stay here, you're going to give birth in the street or in the car or whatever, and the baby's going to die. But then there wasn't nothing fatal to my health.
Right.
So then I went to this other hospital, and we were received, and the baby was born and everything was fine. The hardest part was just being introduced to this world that I did not know, of my baby not being my baby for 2 months because he was stuck in the hospital. And the hardest thing for a mother is to actually give birth to a child and leaving the hospital without the child. I think that was the hardest moment. I remember crying from walking away from the hospital thinking, what kind of mother am I? I've just left my child. So that was that. And then my last pregnancy, which is my second premature baby, that was the fatal one, because everything was fine until another consultation, and they realized I had protein in the urine, which is a sign of high blood pressure, preeclampsia. So then you have the preeclampsia, and if it then it can turn into an eclampsia. That's when you have convulsion, and you even can have a stroke and even die, and then it can just destroy all your organs. So with this pregnancy, everything is going fine, and then the doctor says, okay, we have to stop this pregnancy because you have high blood pressure, and it was so high. They even asked me, how did you get here? I'm like, just took the public transport and I got here. So then I was stuck. So then they said, okay, we're going to monitor it for 3 days, even monitor the amount of urine to be able to kind of decide. And I just remember saying to myself, I'm not going to give birth at that same hospital, because I was already classified high risk because I had my previous pregnancy was a premature baby. So I'm already labeled as high risk, like anything can happen with this woman. So then I'm being followed like twice as much as a normal pregnancy, but at the same hospital where I had my baby. So then being there, and then realizing that something else was going to happen, I say to myself, I think I just decided that no, I'm not going to leave the same nightmare in the same hospital. So then I told the doctor, I'm going to go home. I'm going to monitor whatever you want me to monitor. They gave me the blood pressure cuffs and all of that. And I also had to monitor my urine. And 3 days later, I told them, I'm not coming back. I'm going to change hospital. So the doctor tells me, if you don't come back, you're going to die on Saturday, you and the baby. So I'm just having already words against me. He says, you're going to die this weekend, you and the baby, because this is fatal. I'm like, okay, no problem, we'll see. So I told my husband,
he literally
I'm going to go to another
was
hospital. So
prophesying
then,
to
and
you.
also I was like, if this child is going to come out early, then I don't want to give birth at the same place. So I want to be closer to the house. So then I went to another hospital, like 10 minutes from the house. And there again, like the first hospital, they just received me so well. The welcome was just perfect. And, they reassured me and everything was fine. So then there, they also monitored me for like another day. But then the lady, she was a lovely Dutch gynecologist that said, I don't want you to have a stroke. I don't want your blood pressure to go high. I'm going to suggest that we actually, before the end of the day, that we, plan a C-section and that we take the baby out. And I remember praying to the Lord and saying, and because what I knew was that the more I keep the baby in me, the more that she can put on weight. And, that's all I wanted, because I knew what it was to give birth to a very small baby. But then, they were telling me, you're losing your reflex, you can have a stroke anytime, and we don't want that. And I remember praying, and as I prayed, I literally saw this hand of God, piercing through the wall, and God telling me, it's fine, go. So I told my husband, this is it. Let's get ourselves together. We're going to this delivering room. So we, then it was evening time, and they decided to, plan the C-section. So then this is happening in the evening at night, about 10 p.m. So then being pregnant, having my first mature baby meant that because the cervix was open, they had to kind of sew the cervix, like literally kind of sew it. So that's what they did. They did it at that first hospital. So I'm giving birth at another hospital, and they realized that the way this was sewn is not the way they do it. So then there was another complication. So they called this specialist. I mean, this is like the top gynecologist in Brussels. And the guy was supposed to be working on guard, but he was sleeping and he didn't hear his phone ringing. So then they're like, okay. So they're going crazy. And at that time, my pain is just unbearable. And I've never, ever given birth, with epidural. But I asked them to just give it to me because I just couldn't take the pain anymore. And they did it. So, they fixed my back and they give me all these things. And it didn't work. They added the dose, they increased the dose. It just didn't work. That thing has never worked in my body. And the pain, I was in so much pain that at some point I felt like I was sliding down this kind of corridor. At least it felt like a slide, so I'm going like this. And I'm just going through this thing. It's dark and I just feel like I'm leaving my body somewhere and my spirit is going another place. And I feel like I'm going somewhere. And then suddenly I hear them saying the heart rate of the baby is going down. So then this is when chaos begins. by the time I wake up and I open my eyes, my husband is sleeping. He was just tired. We were there for hours. You know, at this point, that specialist comes and they're able to cut the thread, whatever they use to do to sew. And suddenly they say, okay, you're going to have a C-section. It's going to be an emergency one because, you know, the baby's heart rate is going down. And all I remember is that I was just taken from my bed, you know, to that really thingy that just takes you somewhere there. And I was in the operation room, and I remember just going, ow. And that ow, I think was like something that they gave me to, like, you know, I was literally gone. General anesthetic, and you're gone. And I woke up and I was speaking Dutch. And I'm like, okay, where am I? I'm in this they call it the wake room. So this is like 1 o'clock at night, in the morning. And there's just like one person. I can see one person in the bed, and I can see this lady. I'm literally like in this movie. And I hear her call my husband, say, your wife is awake. So I wake up, and, you know, they take me to the neonatal unit. So then I, you know, see my child for the first time, and I see this tiny little girl. By what I mean tiny is literally the head here, like on the palm of her hand, head here, you know, literally like this, because I used to slide her in my top like that to do skin kangaroo care, which is a skin to skin method to keep her warm, and, you know, to just like get her to have, you know, to be warm, and for me, that contact with me. So then I realized that here we are again, you know, I'm gonna go through the same thing. This baby's born early, and not only is she born early, but she's tiny. So we're gonna be here for another 2 months. But then what the difference between her brother and her is, like, you know, they also say that women, baby girls are stronger than, you know, preemie girls are stronger than preemie boys. And my son was born at 27 weeks, so then his lungs weren't mature. But my daughter at 31 weeks, her lungs were mature. So then she was breathing better than her brother.
Wow.
You know, and she was very tiny. And I remember after giving birth, one of my friends in South Africa sent me a message saying that, oh, your little girl is going to be a prophetic singer. I'm like, okay. And I think she said something like a prophetic dancer, you know, and I can tell you she sings, she dances. And then I remember her, you know, being so tiny in neonatal unit, and the nurses would call her Tina Turner, because the way she would scream, it was like so loud. And the nurse would say, oh, Tina Turner. And I was like, these people don't even know what they're saying. You know, I'm like, they're just confirming this purpose. I was like, okay, God. So then I stayed there for like a month. But then something kicks in. I'm like, okay, if I've gone through this thing twice, then there must be a reason. So then I'm beginning to question God, you know, why? But I remember just after the day after I gave birth, the same doctor comes into my room. She just wanted to check on me, find out how I was doing. And she's then telling me the story, you know, I'm happy that you're doing well. And I can see her turn red. You know, and she's literally telling me, your daughter was born, she was already turning blue. She lost oxygen and we had to resuscitate her. And I'm like, okay. Then I realized that this thing was serious, because then everything comes back to me. Like, I almost felt like I was dying, because I felt like I was sliding into this dark tunnel. And, you know, it was just getting weird. There was just something. But then I remember I could hear people of my church praying, because I could hear prayers in my ears. And I remember my husband texting the church saying, you know, Amour's in the hospital, you know, we have another issue here, we don't know how it's going to go. But I could hear the prayers of the saints. And I just knew, and because I saw that hand, I knew that, you know, God will not leave us, and, you know, everything will be fine. So the next morning, the doctor comes and she explains to me that, you know, I'm happy that you're alive. I'm happy that, you know, you didn't have a stroke. I'm happy that but then all the symptoms of having hypertension, you know, preeclampsia pregnancy then started the day after I gave birth. I was literally hallucinating. You know, I just felt like my head, I was losing it in my head, because I had this, the high blood pressure was still high. I was given magnesium. I don't know how many doses, I mean, the highest doses ever to be able to reduce the blood pressure. And I was having flashes, and this is the flashes that they ask you if you're having, you know, prior to having a stroke, because those are the symptoms. So I'm having it after. And I remember just like walking out of my room at night and just walking in the corridor like a crazy person, because I'm feeling like I'm about to lose my mind, wrong in my head. And I was thinking, oh my God, my children, who's going to look after my children? So I'm like experiencing this kind of death, like crazy experience. I'm like, wow. And I remember I was just praying, and, I was praying and people were praying with me. And I was just holding on to the Lord and to the word. And I knew that it was going to be fine. But then it was a very dark moment. And I think that's when I began to question God, why did you let it happen to me twice? Why? And I remember answering myself. I think I heard the Spirit of the Lord speak to me, but then I was kind of answering myself, saying that I have a calling. This is to do with something that I need to do. And that's when I began to have the idea. I mean, for me, it was an idea of helping other women in neonatal unit here in Belgium, until I realized that if I took it to Africa, it wouldn't be helping or supporting the woman. It's going to be improving and transforming an entire system and changing something. And now that I'm saying this, I'm just thinking that I had to taste death myself to know what it is, what the word maternal mortality means, because I was going to be a statistics. My children were going to be statistics, because they could have died. I remember one time with my first premature baby, they called us for the first time that I decided to stay home and rest. They called us and said, "He didn't sleep well. We have to put it in oxygen tube. We have to intube him, and you have to come now." And it was the longest ride of my life. I literally had to take public transport to go to the hospital. I just felt like I was going to heaven. It was forever. It took forever, because I was so scared, thinking that I was going to die. So when we got there, we found out that they already put the tube in, and because he was too tired to breathe by himself. And my husband was working in Antwerp, which is another town in the Dutch area, and he doesn't even know what speed he was driving at. I think he was driving at, if the limit is 120, he was probably driving 220. Because we just had to get to the hospital, because we were against this scary news that, okay, is he going to make it or not? Because every day with a premature baby, it's an up and down journey. It's never like stable and perfect. But I remember 3 days after my child took it off, he literally pulled it himself.
Wow.
3 days after he pulled it, I came to the hospital to say, "Madam, he pulled it." I'm like, okay, that's fine. That he's not going to have it anymore. He literally pulled it. Wow. It was a green tube. Yeah.
Let's pause right there, Amour, and we'll come back and talk more about how things changed in terms of your mission from that.
Yeah.